Welcome to Green Disruptors, Scaling the Future, a podcast where we dive into the innovations transforming clean energy and the real business challenges of making sustainability scalable. From breakthrough technologies to the tough decisions behind growth, we explore what it takes to build a greener future at scale. I'm your host, Megan Kerr, and my mission is to help green tech companies tell stories that matter. This podcast is brought to you by Mountaintop Social Marketing. All right, welcome back to Green Disruptors. I am excited today to have a conversation with Abhinav, and I'm just going to let him tell about himself and his company and what his background is. So welcome and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Megan. Yes, so happy to be there, part of this podcast. Specifically, when it is green podcast, it matters a lot, specifically with the kind of times we are going. So it becomes really important to kind of spread the word across the globe. So myself, I'm Abhinav Kashal. I, have nearly 24 years of experience, largely into banking and, technology domain and startup domains. So I was a banker in earlier part of my career and then moved on to the startups. I am from India, and the way Indian ecosystem, the startup ecosystem has grown in last 10 years have been phenomenal. Because back in 2011, when the entire journey was started, and I was kind of looking to kind of get more, into the startups and all that. Now we are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, which itself speaks volumes about the kind of stuff. And, obviously the technology powerhouse, we are a technology powerhouse in terms of the kind of people that we produce, in terms of engineers, in terms of its corporate engineers, computer engineers. So I had worked with some fairly large, banks and large unicorns, startups. So I've seen it all, on a high corporate bureaucratic environment to a very startup, do it all kind of stuff. So that's how, my journey of last 24 years have been.
Awesome. And now you are the CEO of Zero Carbon One. So tell us a little bit about that company.
So, this kind of, it's little funny because, when I was in bank in early 2000, I was introduced this concept of carbon credits where, it said that, you emit, you buy, and you emit more. So I was like, I thought it's a very funny concept, and, it's just a classic.
That's what I thought too. Like, this doesn't seem to actually be decreasing anything. It just like pacifies people's consciences.
Correct, cap and trade. So I thought, it's not going to take up. But, after the Paris Agreement happened in 2016, and then, every year there was some more serious steps which were happening. And then this was, the COVID time when it came and, every world was kind of at a standstill. Then I got, I dig deep into the carbon markets in terms of, how the ESG ecosystem is shaping up, how serious are the companies in terms of doing it. And since I was part of, many startups, I kind of did a lot of research into this, that why this climate stuff is taking off, or, what kind of challenges are there. So after, a couple of years of, kind of research, I thought, the climate is the space where we require technology to come and play a bigger role. Because, the good part is that, I have been on the both sides of the aisle, which means I've been a banker, which more means, from an ESG perspective, and, a technology guy. So I could look from a technology angle that how do I plug in the technology and the banking to create something, which is useful for the industry, because there are a lot of challenges. So I founded this company, though last year, but, before that, a year and a half before that, we were already kind of testing, starting to build up the software, trying to put in things together, speaking to the corporates that what are the challenges they feel, and why it will work, why it will not work, kind of listening to their perspective, and fine-tuning our product that what exactly is needed by them.
I found you did your market research.
Yeah, because I've also been as a passion, I've always kind of helped young entrepreneurs, kind of understand how to grow the company, scale it up. So in that process, I've kind of used to kind of do the market research that, why it will work, what are the red flags, how do you kind of overcome that. And that kind of played a
You're
role.
speaking my language there.
That's the role I kind of did before I founded this. So, we went to the corporates, why do you think climate is a challenge and stuff like that? They were very, very different perspective. And we stitched our product and the journey as per what we understood from the market. So if I have to kind of also, tell you about what exactly our platform does. So, yeah. So, yeah. So basically, see, coming back, taking a step back, on the same point, and that's the reason I said now that, when we were speaking to the corporates, that, what are the challenges that you feel in the climate space? A lot of CEOs told me that, look, it's an evolving space. And then there are so many players, there are so many things, and everybody's working in silos. So for example, there is one carbon accounting firm who are just doing GSG emission for you. Then there is an ESG firm who are writing report or making the ESG report for you. Then there are consultants, who are just kind of getting everybody together. Then there are, carbon credit players, and where, they have got projects which you can, kind of offset for your emissions and all that. So there are 5, 6, 7 vendors. Now, the corporates were looking this from a cost perspective. And also, since this was an evolving space, they were not clear that, how much focus they need to put, what kind of sustainability teams they need to put in. So they said, hey, look, we would be really happy if somebody comes and, makes an integrated solution wherein, just right from my factory floor, whatever emissions are there, to an ESG report writing, whatever 5, 6, 7 steps I have to go through, if one platform does it, so then it will make sense. And that's where our entire initial idea started, that we said, hey, let's kind of, get into, the GST emission, carbon accounting for the company, make their life easier. Not let them, say that, after this, you go outside and come back to us and then we take the journey. In place of that, we created this platform, Zero Carbon One.
I was going to say, I imagine the old way where you have 7 different vendors, it would be very easy to get something wrong and have miscommunications happen and really just maybe end up with inaccurate readings and reports.
Absolutely. And this is one of the biggest, threats also in the entire climate space. Because when you do not have a traceability through technology, that, from where this emission is coming, is it a manual reported stuff? And then what is happening? How are you, offsetting it? Is it again, going to your ESG report in terms of, so we created this stuff where we did the, calculation first, all scope 1, 2, 3. Then we said that you offset it on the blockchain. So we use blockchain to kind of do the offsetting of all those verified projects from Gold Standard, Puro, Vera, all the reported registries. And then, kind of take them ahead, that how do you want to decarbonize further towards that SBTI goal? Then, whatever we are having, let's report into whatever format you want to report, be it GRI, CDP, CSRD, now we're working, BRSR in India. So we also, trained a LLM model into a lot of reports. So that, the roadmap is clear for the corporate, so that they do not have to invest in the teams. Rather, they invest in the subscription of the software, which, kind of helps them do most of this stuff, and maybe, just have 1 or 2 guys to kind of guide them through with the entire process.
So when a company adopts your system, what does implementation look like?
Yeah, so the first thing I would start with is with the challenge, which is a universal one, is the data challenge. That look what happens in a company scenario. The entire emission is broken into 3 categories: scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And scope 3, is 70% of your emission, and you do not have any data. And I'll come to it why. So that is the reason why there's a lot of challenge also in this entire space. So scope 1, so scope 1 is fairly easy to do. Scope 2 is also very easy to do, because, scope 1 is, whatever you are doing on your furnace, on your factory floor, that. Scope 2 is whatever you are purchasing.
Because it's there.
It's there.
That makes sense.
Paying the bills, you have everything. Now, scope 3 is your value chain. And that's where the challenge starts, because, you are dependent on your vendors, they are depending on somebody else, and then it's a big chain. And then what also happens is there's absolutely fragmented data. maybe you are measuring in kgs, kilograms, but somebody else is just doing in somebody else doing is something else. So what happens is the data is fragmented, data is not captured. So when we plug into the corporate, the first thing that we do is that we sit with them and define the scope, from inside their factory gate and towards the end of the product life cycle, what exactly they want us to cover. And once that scoping is done with them, then we try and see that how much data they have got specifically for scope 3, because 1 and 2, as I said, is mostly sorted, right? 3, we then understand that what all is the value chain, what all vendors are there, and obviously then we get into the detail that obviously they do not have data. Then how do we bring them to the platform, through various tools that we have got in the platform to get everything, 1, 2, 3 integrated on your dashboard, so that now for the first time the company knows, oh, my emission from each of these scope is this. So that's how it looks like the first journey when we start.
I imagine from a company perspective, just hearing you talk about those problems, like if I was the CEO, I'd be like, I do not know how to solve that. I don't want to deal with it. You're telling me you can. Come on in.
Absolutely.
Is it a pretty easy sell?
No, I would say there are challenges in the entire climate segment, and the challenges have been many. I mean, some have been on the corporate part, some have been on the government part, the regulatory part. Now, what has happened is, if you see, each industry, as you would have seen, evolves when there is a regulatory framework, right? In climate across the globe, you have flip-flops. I don't want to get into specific countries, who went ahead then went back. Now, when they do like this, a CEO would obviously get confused.
Like, what are the regulations right now? Are they going to be the same in 3 years? Do I even care? Do I want to send my budget there?
Absolutely. And then you can have a powerful person walks in and he says, hey, we walk out of all this, right? Then it becomes difficult, because see what happens, entire climate, there is definitely a cost. There is a cost to decarbonization, right? There is an ROI cost. So if you are a CEO and we are talking, you would first ask me that, what is the cost implication which is going to come in? And then we talk about the decarbonization, which essentially at some point of time would mean changes in your current processes, right? Maybe, substituting some of the products with a lower emission products and, changing some certain, like, in terms of chemicals and other. So everything boils down to the cost. Now, their legit question is it the same which is going to be there, or maybe next year the policy is going to change? So there is a lot of uncertainty in the industry, and hence, there is a skepticism in terms of, adopting to the climate. But stating that, I would say the hard to abate sectors, which are steel, cement, aluminum and all that, and even oil and gas, mining and all that, they understand that, this is an important thing for the climate, for the planet. So they are investing. They understand that whatever the regulation is there up and down, but it will be there. So these are the first movers, I would say, who are seriously kind of, adapting. But, as a whole, if I go, then there are a lot of issues, because here the thing is, everything will boil down to the cost. It all depends on the management, how they see their company as an entity. Because, and again, this environment is not only an environment, but also an ESG, right? And let me, in fact, if you are aware, there is a very big Dutch firm, who kind of divested nearly 70 million euros from 12 large, garment companies, including Puma and H&M, because they said that, you are not, kind of investing into renewable, substitution products, your ESG. So ESG can have a big impact. For a company, it all depends which space and which region they are. And if they see this as a threat from their investors or from some body, then they are very, very quick to adapt. Then they go down to each level. But if it's a voluntary market where there is no challenge, it's good to have kind of stuff, then obviously the cost becomes a factor. Then they will question that how many people do we have? And since it's not a one-time do it, like it's a year-on-year exercise. Yeah,
right.
You have to commit, as a corporate, funds to do decarbonization.
So have you I mean, have you specifically gone after like these steel and cement type
Yes.
companies and mining companies to start with?
Yeah, so mining, I would say, little. Mining is actually a very large, piece to kind of solve, because the kind of minerals and stuff that they do, and also
Yeah.
the kind of, I would say, they're little kind of circumvent in terms of their data. Whether their emission data is going to go out, what is going to happen, and stuff like that. So they're a little cautious, I would say, or rather, right word is over cautious on their data part. So mining we will keep aside, but let's talk about cement, steel, and aluminum. These companies, definitely these, when we started, we kind of started with a large, industry as a whole, but we quickly realized that, it is these hard to abate industries who are much better focused, and they're the one, who are talking, rather, where and what they should do. So we kind of went after the steel and cement companies, and even the aluminum, automotive parts, and all those kind of companies, and they are the one who were big early adapters. And obviously the management played a big role. For some of the companies, a good ESG report where they can get a fantastic rating from the rating agencies was the trigger point. And for some of the rest, they wanted to do this any which ways, because they know the regulation will come sooner or later, and they don't want to be a big surprise, because they learn, they run large operations, maybe 20, 30.
I was going to say, like, those guys would be hit first because they're the biggest emitters. So
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which I didn't know till a couple of years ago. Like, we're all worried about driving our cars, but cement production is a way bigger problem.
Yes. So the biggest emitters are the one who obviously they should also have, and they have this consciousness, and they are, working to kind of decarbonize. So, but then again, is a regulatory environment plays a big role, because see, if we talk about cement, specifically the furnace, when they kind of burn the limestone at a very high heat, right? So you need to have carbon capture technology, and these carbon capture technology, right from the furnace, and storing them and things like that, requires a lot of investment and requires a lot of
absolutely.
Right. So this is the kind of challenge where the industry is also looking beyond, towards the government and regulatory environment, that, what incentive are they going to give? Now, if we largely see this entire ESG scope, at some point of time, the carbon credits that everybody wants or want to sell and do has not taken off the way it should have taken off. Right. We do not have any success stories anywhere in the world where, let's say, you would have said, hey, XYZ company invested in the decarbonization. They generated, so much number of carbon credits, which they traded at a higher price. Now, if that kind of story is available, not many corporates will start coming forward to invest into these technologies. Now, since
they need to see success stories before, that makes sense.
Absolutely. See, EU ETS, the oversupply killed the entire, system. It went to nearly zero. So now that kind of creates a big, doubt in the minds of the management, that if we are investing into something like this, and, there is no ROI which is there on the horizon, then why should I invest? So that becomes one of the biggest, trouble or concern area that we as a climate founders have to kind of, cater to. And obviously, these are things which are beyond our control as entrepreneurs. Yeah.
So do you have any specific strategies or solutions or ways to demonstrate ROI that help companies cross that barrier?
Yeah. So how we do it is, so we have kind of broken it down into two parts. What we say is that, and that's the reason that we have to kind of keep evolving as a company also, to kind of be useful for them. Because if you essentially see, this entire GSG, ESG, and all these kind of things is once a year activity when you are going for the annual filing or something like that, right? Now, if you are doing that as a once a year activity, you would always question that, how much do I pay and why should I pay? And, how much utility it is, so it's a pain when you have to do reporting and stuff like that. So what we are trying to do is, make it more like a accounting activity, which is done every month, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that's like hiring someone once a year to do your taxes when you're in a pinch, or hiring a permanent bookkeeper. Obviously, Plan B is a better business strategy, but
Absolutely.
It costs a little more.
So when we go to them, we tell them that, look, if you invest into this, there is one clear-cut advantage is that, you would know where your energy consumptions are happening. Now that's a direct cost to you as a company. And when you use software like us, we can, start predicting what emissions are coming, from which source it is coming, what process it is coming, how you can, kind of optimize it to kind of reduce your emission cost. Now that becomes a right strategy for them, because everybody wants to reduce their bills, right? As large factories. So that's the area that we are able to kind of that's the primary focus area, apart from getting their vendors on board, which is again a pain point for them. So that is the first step. Second step is we are getting deep integration into their systems, kind of helping them that not only emission, if there is something, which you feel largely a painful activity which you want to kind of monitor, you can integrate. Being a tech company, we can always, work around the solutions, integrate certain things along with our architecture. So we kind of, how we present it is that, we want it to be a good utility for even the factory manager to kind of log into software maybe every day or every week, and, kind of see what is happening, where my energies are going, stuff like that, my processes, and how my emission looks like, what is the system predicting for next week, and things like that.
I mean, that seems really smart. Get every level to buy in consistently and be aware. I mean, I imagine they'd get excited about it if they were able to see it consistently.
Yes. Because as a founder, my concern is that, apart from the management, the implementation people are the factory people or the flow people, and how much do they value this, and what problem am I solving for them in their maybe monthly or weekly lives as in their working process. So my focus, our always focus is that in terms of product solutioning to them.
I mean, that's really smart, because if you make it too cerebral or like moral based or long-term thinking, people just tune out. So it's like if it's solving an immediate on the factory floor problem for them, then they want it.
Yes.
And they'll use it.
That's true.
I wish everyone responded to this, like I wish everyone
Absolutely.
could have the energy to care all the time. But
absolutely. I think, once what happens is once the regulatory environment also, kind of shapes up in the way where they get incentivized. So for example, a lot of corporate, what they want is they say, hey, look, if I have an existing process, right? And if I optimize my process, and in that optimization, if I'm able to mitigate the CO2 or, even the nitrogen, I should get the option of generating carbon credits through that process itself, right? Which is possible. I mean, that's not possible. It happens. And some of the registries do, kind of give credits also onto them. So for example, EV, if you set up an EV infrastructure, you can generate carbon credits, by, putting up the structure. Now, even the steel and cement companies, want something like that, so that they are not dependent externally on the outside credits, but are able to kind of either offset through their process, or at least if not, they should be able to sell their, this carbon credits in the market and generate additional revenue. So these things are there, which are the really trigger points. And if as a government, as an industry, as an ecosystem, we are able to solve this, I think then it will become a much more sustainable journey for everybody in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, it's about creating those win-win scenarios for people.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
All right. So, boy, we've covered a lot. I guess I'm curious, just from your business standpoint, like how are you finding people? Like, what's been the biggest challenge in growth for Zero Carbon One?
Yeah. So I would say, again, the challenges, are most of the external one, in terms of, regulatory environment, in terms of convincing that what is the cost that they want to incur. Because see, there are two kind of corporates, I mean, to be honest. One who want just good books in terms of, happy ESG ratings. So they have a different trigger points. And ours is one that, we always go and tell that, look, we want to give you something, which is traceable and go back to each of those levels. And that would mean that you integrate your system. So one of the biggest challenges for us is integrating the entire supply chain, which we have to convince them, the supply chain. But once it is done, because I remember one of the automotive company we were talking were very initially reluctant. They started with their own process, but we were able to convince them. And day one, they did not have any data on their supply chain, and their efficiency was really poor. But today, what we can say that, with our system, their entire supply chain is on the same dashboard, and, they are nearly 50-60% more efficient in terms of sourcing and saving. And now they see, a clear-cut advantage. So so one of the initial challenges remains that, to convince them that how, kind of to do it, to kind of implement these. Once it happens, then we are able to demonstrate. Because one more example I'll give you. I will not name. There is a very large company. It had, 15 people sustainability team. And,
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big team, and they were like kind of saying, hey, we have a software in-house. Why should we do? And somehow I convinced them that, have a demo. And when I was giving demo, they had all these 15, 16 people. And when I demonstrated the capability that we bring to the table, they were all kind of very happy that this is not what our internal processes do. So the challenge is to, kind of make them see the benefits. Then obviously some employees get a little concerned. So I told them that don't take this as a substitute of anybody. Just treat this software as a 16th employee of your sustainability team.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good way of framing it. So do you go visit these companies in person to demonstrate all this, or do you do it online?
Yeah. So we virtually do it. We have we have sales team, and we have, teams in US, Europe. We have just tied up with one of the good, companies in Latin America to kind of exclusively market our software in Latin. So see, these teams, they do their own virtual first, levels. And once, it gets to a level where they want to kind of want to see this stuff.
Where they're pretty serious about it.
They do the demo. Then I also, if I'm required, I do it. We are very happy to go and visit any factories anywhere in the globe whenever they call us. But the first initial stages are always virtual.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. You're not just going to fly around the world. So do you personally do a lot of that traveling?
Yes, I love to kind of, because it always gives me a perspective into each region.
Yeah.
What exactly are they looking at? Because each market is very different. So what are their trigger points? Because for me, it's not a company, but an entire segment or an industry. So obviously I get that inputs wherever I travel, and when I meet them specifically, I make a point to also meet their people who are going to implement that, because they give you sometimes very fantastic, ideas to implement in the journey.
Yeah, I mean, you're helping them, and you're getting so much valuable data.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, a lot of inputs in terms of how to constantly, add value, in our offering, because, it's a very competitive market across the globe. And hence, we are always evolving, always, coming up with new iterations in terms of new updates, so that, we are always a level or two up compared to our competitors.
Well, I was going to say, you kind of already answered, how are you different? But it just seems like the whole start to finish journey,
yes,
is unique.
You got it very clear, because most of our competitors, either they are kind of helping with one particular aspect of the climate space, or two aspects, sometimes three aspects, but not doing the entire end-to-end stuff. Because our thing is that we want to kind of stop the greenwashing, and for that we want that each process should be kind of linked to the previous process, so that just like blockchain, so that you do not kind of underreport any of the processes, or are able to kind of try and do something like what Volkswagen did in terms of calibrating their softwares and stuff like that. We do not want such kind of bad stories to kind of impact the climate.
Absolutely. Well, that's a pretty cool mission, and a very intriguing, if I was a big company, I'd be like, come tell me more. So if someone listening is interested in learning more about Zero Carbon One, what's the best way to do that, or to get in contact with you?
Yeah. So one of the easiest ways that, our website, which is www.zerocarbon.one, ONE, or you can write us on info@zerocarbon.one. Either ways, our teams would love to, get back and, take the stuff away, take the stuff, from there to kind of, help the corporates.
Okay. Well, I've learned a lot from this. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for your contributions. It's the more people I talk to, the more I realize like there are so many complicated challenges, and you need brains and skills from almost every industry to be able to solve these problems. So this is an interesting piece of that. Is there anything that you wanted to share that we didn't go over before we end?
Yeah. So I think, the thing is that the only way that, we can take this ahead is that I would like, large corporates to kind of be forthcoming in terms of, trying it out. And, they're not only us, but the entire ecosystem has so many, companies all across the world. So maybe just, whatever region you are, just choose some of these companies, ask them to kind of come and maybe do a pilot and stuff like that for you. I'm just
at least see where you're at and what starting point where you're at right
because
now.
That will give everybody a perspective into climate, because our thing is that we require massive amount of climate funding. We require massive amount of traction to make it work. So I would say that I would urge large corporates to kind of work with smaller companies in their own region, with large companies, work with whatever you want to work with, but at least, just give a thought on the climate.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a very small step, like figure out where you are. And that will, I mean, it might be shocking and eye-opening.
Absolutely.
And hopefully maybe prick your conscience a little.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been delightful to meet you and learn from you. So good night, because you're in India and I am in the United States. So we are at opposite ends of our day, but it's a good beginning and a good end.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Megan. And thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast.
Yeah. Well, you can come back anytime. Thanks. What a fantastic conversation with Abhinav Kashal. From simplifying carbon accounting to tackling the complexities of Scope 3 emissions, it's clear that the road to decarbonization requires both innovation and collaboration. Whether it's engaging factory-level teams, integrating supply chain data, or making the business case through ROI, today's discussion highlighted how essential it is for corporates to be proactive and strategic in addressing climate change. Thanks again, Abhinav, for sharing your insights and decades of experience. If you found value in this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. It's conversations like these that keep us moving towards a more sustainable future.